Today's lesson is on transformations of logs and exponentials, writing a function g given transformations to a function f. But before we start, pause the video, take a moment to review some of your transformation knowledge before we go to the next slide. Now let's look at some of these problems where we're writing a function g. And we've been doing this throughout the year. We started this first semester, and now we're doing it with exponential and logs. So write a reflection in the x-axis. So remember, a reflection in the x-axis is when we're multiplying a negative to the entire function. So we're multiplying a negative to the entire function. So negative f of x. So that would give us a negative times the entire function. That means we have to multiply that negative to out in front, outside of the exponential. So we're multiplying that outside the exponential. So remember, there's really a hidden 1 being multiplied times 2 to the whatever. So that's going to give us negative 2 to the 3x plus 1 plus 6. Not plus, because we have to also multiply it to the 6 as well. So a negative times a positive is a negative. So a negative times a positive is a negative. And we also have to multiply that to out front. And maybe we write that a little bit closer. So that's what that would look like. Then we want to do a horizontal translation, right 5. So remember, a horizontal translation, right 5, you have to know that fancy notation. That means horizontal's inside. And since it's right 5, that means it would be x minus 5. So the bullet we should have is f of x minus 5. And then remember, that means that x minus 5 is taking the place of that x. So because that is 3 times x, you have to put a parentheses where that x is, and you've got to put x minus 5 where that x is. So that would be, if we did that, that would be negative 2 to the 3 parentheses. Do you see where I'm getting everything from? That's where the x used to be. And then x minus 5 goes where the x used to be. Then you have to distribute and combine like terms. So our final g of x function is going to be negative 2 to the 3x minus 14 and then minus 6. So that's what you should have gotten as your final answer once you've distributed and combined like terms, right? 3 parentheses x minus 5 plus 1 is 3x minus 15, and then 3x minus 14 when you work this out, right? So that's your final answer. So let's look at another one. A reflection in the y-axis, you might want to pause and try this yourself and then see how you do. So a reflection in the y-axis, remember that is when it is f of negative x. So f of negative x. So that means that wherever I see an x, negative x is going in place of where the x used to be. So that's going to give me 4 to the 2 times negative x plus 1 minus 3. So that simplifies to 4 to the negative 2x plus 1 minus 3. So that's where we are. So we're here. And then we need to do a vertical translation up 7. And a vertical, remember, is outside the function. So that's f of x plus 7. So f of x plus 7 means we're just adding 7 to the outside of the function. So our final answer should be 4 to the negative 2x plus 1, and then plus 4. Make sure your exponents are written up high. So always make sure your exponents are written up high. Let's look at the next one. A vertical stretch by a factor of 4, then a horizontal translation, left 2. So a vertical stretch by a factor of 4, that would be 4 times the entire function. So that is 4 times the entire function. So that is 4 times 2x. You cannot say 8x. You cannot multiply these two because you're breaking order of operations. Order of operations says you have to do exponents first before you can multiply. So a lot of kids will want to multiply 8 and get 4 times 2 and get 8x, and that's where they go wrong. So remember, there's a hidden, so this is the base, and so there's really like a hidden 1 out in front of there. So when you multiply by 4, it's just going to be 4 times, and you can even put a parentheses to emphasize 4 times 2 to the x, or you could write 4 times 2 to the x. But it's not really right to leave it as 4 times 2 to the x. That wouldn't make sense. So, and then we're going to do a horizontal translation. Left 2. So a horizontal translation left 2. Remember, if it's left 2, that means it's going to be plus 2. And that means wherever you see the x plus 2 is going to take the place of the x. So that gives you 4 times 2 to the x plus 2. And that's your final answer. So g of x equals 4 times 2 to the x plus 2. So if you want, you could put a dot there or a parentheses, either way. So let's do some logarithms. So here we have, write a vertical stretch by a factor of 3. So a vertical stretch by a factor of 3 means 3 is being multiplied to the entire function, right? So 3 is being multiplied to the entire function. Log base 2 of x plus 5. So the of part, if it doesn't have a parentheses, it's assumed that only the x is part of the log. If I wanted the x plus 5 to be part of the actual log part, the inside of the log, I'd have to put that in parentheses if I wanted the x plus 5 to be inside the log. Otherwise, it's assumed it's outside the log. So I would often put a parentheses around the of part to emphasize that since it doesn't have parentheses, that means only the x is inside the actual log, not the plus 5. So when you multiply by 3, you got to multiply to outside the log. And everybody always forgets this one, don't you? So that would give us 3 times log base 2 of x plus 15. And then we want to do a horizontal translation right 4. So a horizontal translation right 4 is f of x minus 4. And remember, that is going to go in where that x is. So that gives us 3 times log base 2 of x minus 4 plus 15. And that's your final answer. A horizontal stretch by a factor of 3. A horizontal stretch by a factor of 3 means we're doing 3 times the entire function. So 3 is being multiplied by the entire function. So it's 3 times the entire function. So that's log base 7 of 9x plus 1. So once again, only the 9x is actually inside the log. The plus 1 is outside, so we need to multiply 3 to what's outside the log. And then we're going to do a reflection in the x-axis. A reflection in the x-axis, right? People keep getting this backwards. Negative f of x versus f of negative x. This is a reflection in the y-axis. And this is a reflection in the x-axis. So make sure you're getting those straight. So we want to do a reflection in the x-axis, so that means we're multiplying the whole entire log by a negative. So that means so -3 is being multiplied to the outside of the log. Remember, the 9x is inside. That's inside the actual log. So your final answer would be g of x equals -3 log base 7 of 9x minus 3. And if you want to put parentheses around that, you can. When you're writing your logs, make sure that you write your base of the log. Some people put too high and then they write 9x, so be careful. There should be like an imaginary line. So if you have the word log, think of having like an imaginary line, and you want your 9x to go right, and the 7 should go down a little bit below that. Okay, so writing your logs correctly is really important. So I hope you find this helpful. Go back and rewatch it if you need to.